He beat my daughter bloody, then went out for champagne to celebrate. He thought his money made him untouchable. He was about to find out that even a quiet man can burn the whole world down. If you're listening, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how a simple government clerk became a nightmare for a man who thought he owned the city. The clock glowed red. 1:07 a.m. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet you earn after 30 years behind a desk. My name is David. I like order. I like predictability. I spent my life making sure the columns added up and the paperwork was filed correctly. Then the sound shattered the silence. It wasn't a knock, it was a pounding. Frantic, desperate. Nobody knocks like that unless the world is ending. I pulled on my robe. My heart hammered against my ribs. Adrenaline flooded my system. I hadn't moved that fast in years. I rushed down the stairs, the wooden steps cold under my feet. I fumbled with the deadbolt. I wasn't prepared for what was waiting on the other side. I ripped the door open. The porch light spilled onto the walkway. It illuminated a nightmare. It was my daughter, Sarah. She didn't step inside. She collapsed. Her knees buckled, and she fell onto the hardwood floor of my hallway. She crumbled, clutching her stomach. The light caught the side of her face. I stopped breathing. A dark, ugly bruise was already spreading across her cheekbone. It looked like a thundercloud. Her lip was split open, bleeding slowly onto my clean floor. My little girl, broken. Sarah. I knelt beside her. My hands shook. I didn't know where to touch her. Honey, what happened? Were you in an accident? She let out a sound that wasn't a word, just a raw, broken sob. She flinched when I touched her arm. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief. It was Mark, she whispered. The name tasted like acid. Mark, her husband, the charming, successful investment banker, the man I had trusted with the most precious thing in my life. I thought I knew him. I was wrong. He hit me, Dad, she cried. He hit me hard. I felt a strange coldness wash over me. It wasn't panic, it wasn't shock. It was a deep, icy fury that settled in my chest. I had spent my life following rules. Mark had just broken the most important rule of all, and he was about to find out the penalty. I managed to get her to the living room sofa. She was trembling, shock setting in. I grabbed the first aid kit from the bathroom. My mind was racing, trying to process the image of her bruised face. My hands were steady now, methodical, like I was organizing a file cabinet. But this wasn't paperwork. This was war. Why? I asked, dabbing gently at her split lip with an antiseptic wipe. Why would he do this? Sarah flinched. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the blood. I confronted him, she whispered. I found the emails, the texts, the photos. He's cheating? The word felt dirty. Yes, with Jessica, she sobbed. His secretary. The cliché was almost laughable. Almost. But that wasn't the worst part. I told him I knew, Sarah continued, her voice breaking. I told him I was leaving. I told him I was going to take half of everything. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling uncontrollably. He went crazy, Dad. He said I'd ruined everything. He said I wasn't going to take his money. She finally met my eyes. The betrayal in her eyes was worse than the bruises. He beat me for his secretary. And for his bank account. He beat her because she caught him. He beat her because he was afraid of losing money. It was calculated. It was cruel. I stopped cleaning the wound. I looked at Sarah. Mark hadn't just attacked her body. He had tried to crush her spirit. He had tried to make her feel worthless. He thought she was weak. He thought I was weak, too. He was wrong about both of us. I stood up slowly. The icy fury settled deep in my bones. I walked back to the hallway closet. Dad? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. What are you doing? Are you calling the police? Not yet, I said. My voice was steady, almost calm. I took my heavy winter coat off the hanger and put it on. Where are you going? Dad, don't go near him. He's dangerous. I zipped up the coat. I didn't look at her. I looked at the door. He thinks he can discard you, I said quietly. He thinks he can hurt you and walk away because he has money and power. I turned back to her. The look in my eyes must have scared her. He's wrong. You are safe here, Sarah. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. I walked out into the cold night air. I wasn't going to fight Mark. I wasn't going to scream at him. That's what he would expect. A desperate father making a scene. I was a clerk. I knew how systems worked, and I knew how to take them apart, piece by piece. I got into my car. The engine turned over, a low growl in the quiet street. The plan wasn't formed yet, but the intention was clear. I was going to erase him. I didn't drive to Mark's apartment. That was too obvious, too emotional. I needed clarity. I needed leverage. I drove to the business district downtown. Mark was a rising star at a large investment firm, Apex Financial. They had a massive glass building that overlooked the city, a monument to arrogance. I parked across the street in the shadows, and I waited. It was nearly 3 a.m. The city was asleep, but the lights on the executive floor, Mark's floor, were still on. I watched the revolving doors. My patience was endless. I had spent 30 years waiting for retirement. I could wait all night. About 20 minutes later, I saw movement. The lobby doors opened. It was them, Mark and a young woman. Blonde, expensive clothes, Jessica. They walked out of the building. 20 minutes later, I saw movement. The lobby doors opened. It was them, Mark and a young woman. Blonde, expensive clothes, Jessica. They walked out of the building. He didn't look like a man who had just beaten his wife into a pulp 3 hours earlier. He looked relaxed, happy. He had his arm around her waist. She was laughing, tossing her hair back. The sound echoed in the empty street. It was a sharp, bright sound, a sound of victory. They got into his expensive sports car, a black Porsche. He peeled out of the parking garage, heading toward the upscale part of town, the trendy late-night bars. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles turned white. They weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were celebrating. "Enjoy it," I whispered to the disappearing taillights. "It's the last good night you'll ever have." When I got home, the house was dark. Sarah was asleep on the sofa, exhausted from the trauma. I covered her with a blanket. Max, their golden retriever, was usually by her side, but Max wasn't here. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Where was the dog? I went into my study. I turned on my computer. I needed information. Mark was smart, but he was also arrogant. He flaunted his wealth. The Porsche, the $1,000 suits, the lavish parties they threw. He wanted everyone to see how successful he was. But where did it all really come from? His salary at Apex Financial was good, but not Porsche and penthouse good. Something didn't add up, and if there's one thing I know, it's numbers. I needed help. Someone who understood money better than I did. Someone who knew how to find secrets buried in spreadsheets. The next morning, I made sure Sarah had breakfast. The swelling around her eye had gone down, but the color was a sickening purple. She barely touched her food. I made a call. "Robert? It's David." Robert was an old colleague, a forensic accountant. He had retired a year before I did. We worked together on dull tax compliance cases. He chewed on unlit cigars and saw patterns where everyone else saw chaos. He was the best I knew. "David, long time no hear. How's retirement treating you? Bored yet?" Robert boomed over the phone. "It's complicated," I said. "I need a favor, Robert. A big one, and it has to be discreet." I heard the smile leave his voice. "What's going on?" "It's about my son-in-law, Mark. I need you to look into his finances, his business dealings, everything at Apex Financial." There was a pause. I could hear the clicking of a lighter. Robert wasn't supposed to smoke anymore. "David, that's risky," he said, his voice low. "Apex Financial is huge. They have lawyers who will eat us alive if we start digging without cause." "I have cause," I said. I looked at the door to the living room where Sarah was resting. He hurt Sarah. Robert knew Sarah. He had known her since she was a child. He adored her. Hurt her, how? He beat her, Robert. Badly. The silence on the other end of the line stretched out. It was a heavy silence, a dangerous silence. When Robert spoke again, his voice was ice cold. All the cheerfulness was gone. "Send me everything you have on him," he said. "I'll start digging. And David." "Yes? We're going to bury this guy." I sent Robert everything I knew. Mark's full name, his title, his public profiles. I waited. The waiting was the hardest part. Later that day, Sarah's best friend, Laura, stopped by. She brought flowers and food. She hugged Sarah tightly. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," Laura whispered. "I can't believe he did this." But something in her eyes bothered me. She looked guilty. He seems so charming, I said, watching her closely. Laura avoided my gaze. She started fussing with the flowers. He was always buying her things, taking her on trips. Did you ever see him angry? I pressed. Laura hesitated. Once, at a party, he drank too much. He grabbed Sarah's arm. Hard. I thought he was just being protective. She looked up, tears in her eyes. Should have said something. I should have warned her. She knew. She saw the signs, and stayed silent. It was a small betrayal, but it stung. Everyone loved Mark's success story. Nobody wanted to see the darkness underneath. 2 days later, Robert called me back. David, you need to come over. Now, and bring a strong stomach. His voice was tight. Urgent. This was it. The first crack in Mark's perfect facade. I drove to Robert's house. He lived in a small, cluttered bungalow. Inside, it was chaos. Papers were spread out all over his dining room table. Spreadsheets, bank records, corporate filings. Robert looked tired, but his eyes were burning with intensity. He was chewing furiously on a cigar. You were right, Robert said, pointing to a spreadsheet. He didn't even say hello. His lifestyle doesn't match his income. Not even close. He's spending 3 times what he earns. So he's in debt? I asked. No, Robert shook his head. He has no debt. He pays cash for everything. The Porsche, the condo, the vacations. But that's not the real issue. He slid a paper toward me. It was a list of transactions. He's been moving money, Robert explained. His finger traced the path. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. From the company's client accounts. I stared at the numbers. They were staggering. Millions of dollars. He's stealing from his own clients. Embezzlement, Robert confirmed. High-level fraud. He moves the money into a series of shell corporations, and then finally into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. This was the first major twist. Mark wasn't just a cheating, abusive husband. He was a high-level criminal. This changed everything. It wasn't just about justice for Sarah anymore. It was about exposing a massive fraud, and it gave me the weapon I needed. He's good, David, Robert admitted, rubbing his eyes. He covers his tracks well. He uses complex algorithms to hide the transfers within legitimate transactions. But there's a pattern. He's using the company's own system against itself. We had him, or at least, we knew what he was doing. Proving it would be harder. Just as I was absorbing this information, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed on the screen. Mark. My blood ran cold. I looked at Robert. He nodded grimly. I put the phone on speaker. David. Mark's voice was smooth. Oily, dripping with fake concern. Is Sarah there? I've been so worried. She's here, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of hearing my anger. Thank God. He sighed dramatically. Look, I don't know what she told you, but things got heated the other night. We had a fight. He paused, waiting for me to react. I gave him nothing. She was hysterical. David, absolutely out of control. She tripped and fell down the stairs. I looked at the photos I had taken of Sarah's bruises. The handprint on her arm, the split lip, the bruised ribs. She tripped, I repeated flatly. Lies. He always cracked his knuckles when he lied. I imagined him doing it now. Yes. You know how emotional she can be, Mark continued, his voice turning condescending. Frankly, I think she's unstable. I'm worried about her mental health. Maybe she should see a doctor, a specialist. He was already building his defense, gaslighting her, trying to paint her as crazy, trying to discredit her before she even spoke. It was calculated, cold, evil. I'll take care of her, I said. Good. I'll come by later to pick up some of my things and talk to her. We need to resolve this misunderstanding. No, I said firmly. She doesn't want to see you. You are not welcome in my house. Mark's tone shifted instantly. The smoothness vanished, replaced by steel. David, don't interfere in my marriage. He threatened. She is my wife. I have a right to see her. If you try to keep her from me, there will be consequences. Not in my house, I said. I hung up. Robert looked at me, his face grim. He's dangerous, David. He's not just an abuser. He's a sociopath. If he knows we're looking into his finances, he won't hesitate to come after us. He already came after my daughter, I said. He has no idea what's coming for him. But Mark was faster than I thought. He was about to play his cruelest card yet. When I got home, the atmosphere in the house had changed. It felt heavier, darker. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Her face was pale, paler than before. "What's wrong?" I asked. She held up the phone. Her hands were shaking again. "He froze our joint bank accounts," she whispered. "All of them, and he canceled my credit cards." I sat down next to her. Mark was tightening the screws. He wasn't just angry. He was methodical. He was trying to isolate her, make her dependent on him, force her to come crawling back. "It's okay," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "We have my savings, my pension. You don't need his money. It's not just the money, Dad," she whispered. Tears welled up in her eyes. "He took my car keys before I ran out. I have nothing. No money, no car, no clothes except what I was wearing." She was trapped, exactly where he wanted her. She started to cry again, soft, hopeless tears. And Max. The golden retriever. I had forgotten about the dog. Sarah adored him. He was her shadow, her comfort. "What about Max?" I asked. Dread pulled in my stomach. I already knew the answer. Her phone pinged. A message from Mark. She opened it and let out a strangled cry, a sound of pure agony. It was a photo. Max, sitting inside a concrete kennel. Small, dirty, he looked confused and scared. His eyes were wide and pleading. Then another message. "If you want the mutt, go get him. He's at the city shelter on the east side." The east side shelter. It was notorious. Overcrowded. Underfunded. High kill. He knows I can't get there. Sarah sobbed, clutching the phone to her chest. "He knows I'm hurt and I don't have a car. He's doing this to punish me. He's gonna let them kill Max." This was the moment, the breaking point. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just greed. It was calculated sadism. He wasn't just trying to control her. He was enjoying her pain. He had taken an innocent animal, a creature she loved, and thrown it away like trash, just to hurt her more. There was no remorse, just a twisted sense of power. He was a monster. "I have to go get him, Dad." Sarah tried to stand up, wincing in pain. Her ribs were still badly bruised. "No," I said, gently pushing her back into the chair. My voice was firm. "You stay here and rest. I'll get Max." I grabbed my keys and drove across the city. My mind was racing. This wasn't about investigation anymore. This was about destruction. When I got to the shelter, it was chaos. The noise of barking dogs was deafening. The smell of disinfectant and desperation hung heavy in the air. It was a place where hope came to die. I found the front desk. A woman was working behind the counter. She looked tired, overwhelmed. Her name tag read Maria. "I'm here for a golden retriever, Max. He was dropped off today." Maria sighed. "Sir, we take in dozens of dogs a day. Do you have an intake number?" My son-in-law dropped him off. "Mark. He surrendered him." She checked the computer. Her expression didn't change. "Okay, I see him. But he was surrendered by the owner. You can't just take him back. There's a mandatory holding period." "How long?" My voice was tight. 5 days, to give the owner a chance to reclaim him. After that, he's evaluated for adoption. "I need him now," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. I couldn't let Max stay here, not even for a night. "I'm sorry, sir. Rules are rules." She pointed to a sign on the wall. Strict adherence to policy. Bureaucracy. My old enemy. I looked at the clock on the wall. Every minute Max spent here was torture for Sarah. And I knew Mark. He might have told them the dog was aggressive, just to ensure he was put down quickly. "Let me adopt him then," I said. "You can't adopt him until the holding period is over." I leaned closer. I had to make her understand. I let the mask slip. I let her see the raw pain in my eyes. "Listen to me," I pleaded. "My daughter is hurt. She's scared. That dog is the only thing that will make her feel better. Please, Let me take him home. Maria looked at me. Sympathy warred with the rules. She glanced around the crowded lobby. I can lose my job, she whispered. Please, I begged. I was willing to do anything. She sighed. A long, heavy sigh. She looked around again, making sure her supervisor wasn't watching. Wait here, she muttered. She disappeared into the back. The minutes ticked by. It felt like an eternity. I paced the lobby, my heart pounding. What if she couldn't do it? What if Mark had already ensured Max was gone? A few minutes later she returned, with Max. He was shaking. His tail was tucked between his legs. He looked terrified, but he was alive. Thank you, I whispered, relief washing over me. I almost cried. If anyone asks, Maria said quickly, handing me the leash. You found him as a stray and brought him in, and then adopted him through the proper channels. I backdated the paperwork. She had broken the rules for me. A stranger. Sometimes humanity wins. I drove home with Max in the passenger seat. He pressed his head against my hand, whimpering softly. When we walked in the door, Sarah cried out, a sound of pure joy. She fell to her knees, hugging the dog tightly. Max licked her face, his tail wagging furiously. Seeing them together solidified my resolve. Mark had to be stopped, and I knew exactly how to do it. Robert and I continued to dig. We had the pattern of the embezzlement. We knew the offshore accounts, but we needed hard evidence. Something undeniable that tied Mark directly to the stolen money. The transfers, Robert said, pointing at the screen. We were back in his office. They are all initiated from his office computer, but he uses a VPN and randomized passwords. We can't access his system remotely. What about the secretary? I asked. Jessica, he was with her that night. They were celebrating. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was clear I couldn't handle this alone. It's possible she's involved, Robert mused, chewing on another cigar. But usually guys like Mark keep their illegal activities separate from their mistresses. They don't want the women to have leverage. I wasn't so sure. Mark was arrogant. He liked to show off. He liked to feel powerful, and sharing his secrets might be part of his twisted game. I decided to find out. I started watching Jessica. I became her shadow. I followed her routine. She went to work at Apex Financial. She went to the gym, and then usually met Mark at his apartment or a fancy restaurant. They were still flaunting their affair, even now. One evening, I followed her to a coffee shop near her apartment. She was sitting alone, typing furiously on a laptop. I watched her through the window. She didn't look like a woman enjoying a lavish affair. She looked stressed, nervous. She kept biting her nails, looking over her shoulder. I went inside and ordered a coffee. I sat down at a table near hers, close enough to see her screen. She was working on spreadsheets. I recognized the format. They looked similar to the ones Robert had shown me, the shell corporations. The offshore accounts. This was the second twist. The deeper betrayal. Jessica wasn't just the mistress. She was the accomplice. She was doing the dirty work, managing the stolen money. Mark wasn't protecting himself from her. He was using her. I needed to get my hands on that laptop. I waited. Patience. The key to any successful operation. She finally got up to go to the restroom. She left the laptop open, on the table. A rookie mistake. Arrogance. She thought she was safe. It was a huge risk. If I was caught, everything would be over. I would go to jail. Mark would win. I took a deep breath. I thought of Sarah. I thought of Max. I walked over to her table. I pretended to be looking for a napkin. My movements were slow, deliberate. I slipped a small USB drive into the side of the laptop. It was a program Robert had given me. A sophisticated piece of spyware. It would automatically download all the files on the computer within minutes. My heart was pounding. It felt like thunder in my chest. I thought everyone in the coffee shop could hear it. Jessica came back. I quickly moved away, grabbing my coffee. I tried to look casual, just an old man getting his caffeine fix. She sat down. She didn't notice the USB drive. I left the shop. I waited outside, across the street, praying the program worked. A few minutes later, I checked the signal on my phone. The download was complete. I had the evidence. Now I had to get the USB drive back. I waited until she closed the laptop and packed it into her bag. She walked out of the coffee shop, heading toward her apartment. I followed her. I needed a distraction. A moment of confusion. I accidentally bumped into her, knocking her bag off her shoulder. Her laptop spilled onto the sidewalk. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," I apologized profusely, playing the role of a clumsy old man. I helped her pick up her things. In the confusion, my hand found the USB drive. I pulled it out of the laptop and slipped it into my pocket. Sleight of hand. A skill I didn't know I had. She was annoyed, furious. "Watch where you're going, old man," she snarled. If she only knew. I drove straight to Robert's house. We plugged the USB drive into his computer. The files loaded, a treasure trove of criminality. "We got it," Robert breathed, scrolling through the data. "We got everything. The hidden ledger, the detailed records of every transaction, the offshore account numbers, the passwords, and emails. Hundreds of emails between Mark and Jessica, discussing the transfers. The shell corporations, the plans to cover their tracks. She's the architect," Robert said, stunned. "She designed the algorithm to hide the transfers. He's the front man. She's the brains. We had them both. Cold, but we weren't done yet. We needed to make sure they couldn't escape." The next day, a setback. Robert called me. Panic in his voice. "David, we have a problem. Mark is moving the money, fast. He must suspect something." I felt a chill. Had he realized I was investigating him? Had Jessica noticed something missing from her laptop? "How much time do we have?" "A day or two at most." Robert said, "He's transferring everything to encrypted cryptocurrency wallets. Once the India is moved, it will be almost impossible to trace, and they will disappear. We needed to act quickly. But how? If we went to the police, it would take weeks, maybe months, to build a case. The bureaucracy would slow us down. By then, the money would be gone. I needed a way to expose him publicly. Undeniably, spectacularly. I looked at the calendar on my desk. An invitation was pinned to it. Sarah had given it to me weeks ago. The annual Apex Financial Gala. This weekend. Mark was receiving an award, the guest of honor. I looked at the title of the award, Integrity in Business. The irony was almost too much. That was it. The perfect stage, the perfect trap. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed help from the inside. I needed access. I needed security details. I remembered something Robert found, a name that kept popping up in Mark's emails. Stephen Chen, Mark's colleague and rival. I found Stephen Chen's office number. I called him. "Mr. Chen, my name is David. I believe we have a mutual interest in Mark." Chen was cautious. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows that Mark is stealing from the company," I said. "And someone who knows that you suspect it too." There was a long pause. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I have proof," I said, "and I'm willing to share it. But I need information. The gala, the security protocols, the audio-visual setup." Chen hesitated. He wanted Mark gone. He wanted his job. Ambition was a powerful motivator. "Meet me in the lobby of your building in an hour," he said, and hung up. I met Chen. He was sharp, ambitious. He didn't trust me. But he hated Mark more. He gave me the details I needed. The layout of the ballroom, the timing of the award ceremony, the type of projector system they used. "If you're lying," Chen warned me, "I will destroy you." "I'm not lying," I said. But I still need one more piece of the puzzle. I needed Jessica. I found her the next day, outside the Apex Financial building. She was getting into a taxi. "Jessica," I called out. She turned, recognized me from the coffee shop. Her eyes narrowed. "You again? Stay away from me. We need to talk," I said, my voice low. "It's about Mark and the embezzlement." Her face went white. She froze, one foot inside the taxi. She looked around nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about," she hissed. "I have your laptop files," I said, pulling the USB drive out of my pocket. I held it up for her to see. The ledger, the algorithm, the offshore accounts, the emails where you discussed the plan to run. She stared at the USB drive, terror in her eyes. She knew she was caught. He's using you, Jessica, I said, keeping my voice calm, almost sympathetic. You designed the system. You did all the illegal work. When this comes out, he will let you take the fall. He will say you did it all without his knowledge. You're the brains. He's just the pretty face. He wouldn't do that, she whispered, but I could see the doubt creeping in. She knew what he was capable of. He beat his wife senseless because she found out about your affair. I said coldly. He left her penniless. He abandoned their dog at a kill shelter just to hurt her. Do you really think he cares about you? She was silent. Tears welled up in her eyes. The mascara started to run. He's moving the money, Jessica, I continued, pressing the advantage. He's getting ready to run. Is he taking you with him, or is he leaving you behind to face the consequences? I could see the calculation in her eyes, the realization that she had been played, the fear of prison. What do you want? She asked, her voice trembling. I want justice, I said, for my daughter, and I'm offering you a way out. Just help me expose him, and I will make sure the authorities know you cooperated. You might avoid jail time. She looked at the ground, wrestling with the choice, loyalty to Mark or saving herself. Self-preservation won, it always does. Finally, she looked up at me, resolve hardening her eyes. What do I need to do? The trap was set. The night of the gala, the ballroom at the Grand Hyatt Hotel was filled with wealthy, powerful people. Champagne flowed, music played, tuxedos and glittering gowns. It was Mark's world, a world built on lies and stolen money. I'd walked in, wearing a rented tuxedo. It felt stiff, uncomfortable. Sarah was with me, her arm linked with mine. She wore a simple black dress. The bruises on her face were hidden by makeup, but the strength in her eyes was real. Are you sure about this, Dad? She whispered, her hand trembling on my arm. It feels so public. He needs to pay for what he did, I said. All of it, in front of the world he tried so hard to impress. We saw Mark across the room, holding court, laughing loudly, a glass of champagne in his hand. He was the center of attention. Stephen Chen was standing near him, a tight smile plastered on his face. Mark saw us and froze. His smile faltered. The glass in his hand trembled. He quickly excused himself and strode over to us. His face was a mask of fury. What are you doing here? He hissed, keeping his voice low. You're trying to ruin my night. You're trying to embarrass me. I'm here to see you get your award, I said calmly. Integrity in business. It's quite an achievement, Mark. Get her out of here, he sneered, looking at Sarah with contempt. She doesn't belong here. She's a disgrace. He cracked his knuckles. The sound was sharp in the quiet murmur of the crowd. She belongs here more than you do, I said. My voice was level, but the anger was simmering just below the surface. Before he could respond, the music stopped. The CEO of Apex Financial, Mr. Harrison, took the stage. He was a pompous man, loved the sound of his own voice. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, it is my honor to present this year's Integrity in Business Award to a man who embodies the values of our company, a man whose hard work and dedication have brought us unprecedented success. Please welcome Mark. The crowd applauded politely. Mark straightened his tie, plastered a fake smile on his face, and walked up to the stage. This was it, the moment of truth. He accepted the award, a heavy crystal trophy. He held it high, basking in the applause. Thank you, he began, his voice smooth and confident. Integrity is not just a word. It is a commitment, a promise to our clients, our colleagues, and ourselves, to always do the right thing, even when it's hard. As he spoke, I walked toward the side of the stage. The audio-visual equipment was set up there. Jessica was waiting, nervous, pale. She handed me the USB drive. Her hands were shaking. I plugged it into the projector system to uphold the highest ethical standards. Mark continued, oblivious to what was happening behind him, But sometimes, I said, my voice amplified by the microphone I had just switched on, the hardest thing is facing the truth. The room went silent, dead silent. Everyone turned to look at me. Mark froze, confusion and anger warring on his face. "Who is this?" Mr. Harrison demanded, looking annoyed at the interruption. "Sir, this is a private event." "My name is David," I said, "and I believe there has been a mistake. You gave the award to the wrong man." I clicked the button on the projector remote. The large screen behind Mark, which had been displaying the company logo, suddenly changed. It showed the ledger, the detailed records of the stolen money, the dates, the amounts, the offshore account numbers, the algorithm Jessica had designed. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Mark stared at the screen. His face turned ashen. He looked like he was going to be sick. "What is the meaning of this?" Mr. Harrison shouted, realization dawning on his face. His voice shook with rage. "This is the proof," I announced, my voice ringing through the ballroom, "that your star employee, your man of integrity, has been embezzling millions of dollars from your clients. For years," Mark tried to speak, but no sound came out. He was paralyzed. "He's lying," he finally choked out, pointing a trembling finger at me. "This is a setup. He's trying to destroy me." Then Jessica walked onto the stage. "It's true," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I helped him do it. I designed the system. I managed the transfers. I have the emails." Mark stared at her, betrayal written all over his face. "Jessica, how could you? I loved you." "You used me, Mark," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You were going to let me take the fall. You were going to run without me." The room erupted into chaos. People were shouting, demanding answers. The press rushed forward, cameras flashing. Mark panicked. He looked around wildly, searching for an escape. But there was none. He was trapped. He turned to Mr. Harrison, desperation in his eyes. He tried one last desperate lie. "It wasn't me," he screamed. "It was my wife, Sarah. She was bleeding the company dry with her spending habits. I was just trying to protect the assets." He pointed at Sarah, who was standing at the edge of the crowd, watching him with cold detachment. "He's blaming his wife?" Someone in the crowd whispered, disgusted. "That's right," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "The wife he beat senseless because she found out about his affair and his crimes." I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. This time, it showed the photos I had taken of Sarah's bruises, the dark purple marks on her face, the handprint on her arm, the bruised ribs. The crowd gasped again, this time in horror. Then, one last image, the photo of Max in the shelter kennel, scared and alone, and the text message from Mark, "If you want the mutt, go get him." The crowd turned on him. The whispers turned into angry shouts. "Monster!" someone yelled. At that moment, the doors of the ballroom burst open. 2 police officers walked in, followed by a man in a sharp suit. Tex Miller from the Financial Crimes Unit. Robert had alerted them beforehand. They walked straight up to the stage. "Mark," Detective Miller said, "you are under arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement, and assault." They grabbed his arms and put him in handcuffs. The crystal trophy fell from his hands and shattered on the floor, broken into a million pieces, just like his life. As they led him away, he looked back at me, his eyes burning with hatred. I met his gaze, my face impassive. I felt nothing, no triumph, no joy, just a cold satisfaction. Sarah watched him go. A single tear traced a path through her makeup. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of relief. It was over. The fallout was massive. The story was all over the news. The integrity scandal. Mark's face was plastered on every screen. Apex Financial faced a huge scandal. Clients pulled their money. The stock plummeted. Mr. Harrison was fired. Stephen Chen was promoted. He never acknowledged my role, but he made sure the company didn't press charges against me for the disruption. Jessica made a deal with the prosecutors. She testified against Mark, providing all the details of their scheme. In exchange for her cooperation, she received a lighter sentence, probation, and community service. Mark went to prison. A long time. 15 years. His money, his power, his reputation, all gone. Destroyed. Erased. The divorce was quick and brutal. I hired the best divorce lawyer in the city. We took Mark for everything he had left. Sarah got the house, the car, and a significant portion of the assets that were recovered from the offshore accounts. Justice had been served. A few months later, Sarah and I were sitting in my quiet living room. The evening sun cast long shadows on the walls. The house was peaceful again. Max was sleeping peacefully at our feet, his tail thumping softly against the floor. He was safe. Sarah was healing. The bruises had faded. The emotional scars would take longer to heal. She was starting therapy, rebuilding her life, stronger than before. "I still can't believe you did it, Dad," she said quietly, sipping her tea. "You took him down, all by yourself." "I had help," I said, thinking of Robert, Maria, Stephen Chen, and even Jessica. "You were always so quiet," she smiled faintly. "So organized, the government clerk. I never knew you had this ruthless streak." I looked at her. "My daughter, my world. When someone hurts my child," I said, "they break the rules, and when the rules are broken, there must be consequences." I just balanced the ledger. I looked at the mantelpiece. A photo of my late wife, Elizabeth, sat there. She was smiling, her eyes full of light. I thought about the promise I had made to her when Sarah was born, to always protect her, to keep her safe. It had been a messy, brutal fight. I had broken a few rules myself along the way. I had become a different person, a harder person. But I had won. I looked back at the photo of Elizabeth and whispered, "I kept her safe." The house was quiet again. The order was restored, and in the silence I found a measure of peace. I was just a clerk, but I was a clerk who knew how to take the system apart. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your time matters.